Today we're going to be talking about how to select the best bookkeeping clients that know your value as a bookkeeper, so you don't have to waste time with people who really are not good clients and not aligned with what you want. So let's get right into number one. Select a client that you have a good gut instinct about. And I know this is very intangible and we're going to get more into like the practical tips also, but honestly, again and again, like my gut feeling about someone is usually correct. So in the initial email, in the initial interview, if you are doing like a review of their books, if maybe you're doing like a one-off project, any little interactions you have with your new client, if you don't get a good feeling, if you feel like they're not running their business with integrity or they're trying to cut corners, really try to trust yourself and how you feel. Because I have definitely ignored those red flags and it just doesn't work out well. I remember one initial meeting I had, this guy was like going on and on about his messy divorce and how him and his ex-wife were trying to split up their business. And I was just feeling like, oh, this is going to be such a mess. And thankfully to both of us, he actually did not end up hiring me. And I really think that was a blessing in disguise, because I think at that point I didn't have the confidence to say no to that client, but I think it would have been a big pain. All right, number two sign of a good client is that they are organized. So there are tons and tons of business owners that have a hard time with paperwork. They have a hard time, sifting through financial stuff. And that is why they hired you. And I think to some extent this is okay. Like, you are there to help them get organized. You are there to send them reminders, to send them nice, tidy, like financial reports. But if you can tell this person's life is just in chaos and that's just kind of how they operate, for me, that is a no-go. I recently heard a YouTuber say, I'm gonna link him down below, that he wanted to be better for his best type of client. So I think that's a really good mentality to have, because think about your best ideal client and then you want to be the best version of yourself for that person. That is going to make everyone the happiest, right? So if you have this super chaotic client and that is not how you thrive, you are not going to be the best bookkeeper you can for them. Number three, they respect your boundaries. So you were hired to do, certain tasks. It's hopefully in your contract of employment that you signed with your new client. But if they start giving you like extra projects, maybe extra tax prep that wasn't, part of your agreement, then I would try at first to have like an open conversation with this person. Like, they might not know that they're doing this. So first chat with them about it. And you can say it in a nice professional way that, here's what I charge for those extra services. And so maybe you decide, I'm not going to charge you this time, but if you do ask me to do these things in the future, this is my rate. And when it comes to boundaries, and actually a lot of these, pay attention to how the person talks about their previous bookkeeper. Like, are they switching bookkeepers a lot? Do they have a lot of negative things to say? That is always a key that they might be kind of a hard client to work with. Number four is you want to look for good communication. So is this person, replying to emails within a reasonable amount of time? Can they communicate their business needs? And are they willing to, get on a phone call, that type of thing? In my experience, the usual pattern for this is at the beginning of your relationship, they're really excited to hire a bookkeeper. They're like, yes, finally I get like a really good bookkeeper in here who's going to help me out a lot. And then maybe through like the initial setup process, they're really good, really responsive. And then at some point, maybe like 6 months in or so, they move on to other priorities and maybe they are less quick about getting back to you. And you can kind of decide for yourself what your threshold is, like if this really bothers you or if you don't really care. But what does tend to happen is that if they are not replying to you, it's going to delay your work. And you can talk to the client and be like, if I don't hear back from you about these transactions, do you want me to just like take my best guess and categorize them? And then maybe you can do a big check at the end of the year. So some of this stuff you can kind of work out in like a dialogue, but you don't want their lack of communication to lead to inaccuracies in your work. Like delays, yes, maybe that's mutually agreed on, but I do find that these types of clients are usually like trying their best, but they might just be, distracted or really busy. And so usually they don't care if my stuff is late if I'm waiting on them, and they totally understand that. So really what I do is I just try to contact someone a couple times, and if I don't hear back, I just like wait a little bit and eventually they'll get back around to me. You can do different things. You can set calendar reminders. Maybe they prefer a different type of communication. Maybe they hate emails, but they will do a weekly call with you. But I do think it's important to have a communication system that works for both of you. Number five is integrity. This is a big one. Do they want you to bend the rules on stuff? Are they trying to be like slick and take a bunch of deductions that aren't really business deductions? And usually you can kind of tell the difference between people who just don't know, like they're literally inexperienced, and people who don't care and they just think the rules should be bent for them. I've had clients who are confused about the meals rule, right? That's a little confusing. I actually have a video on that you can search on my channel. One client was trying to buy like work clothes as a business expense, and I was like, that's not deductible. I don't think that that is ever really deductible. Maybe there's some cases in certain jobs, but usually if you're just buying like like nice suit and tie? No. And with the meals one, I think I did have to remind them a couple times. I'm like, if you're just going out and buying a meal for yourself, it does not count. It's not a business deduction. That's just like you eating. But if you're meeting with a client, that is when, you know, and you're talking about business, that is when it's deductible. So that person, I feel like they didn't want to believe me, but after a while they did. And you can kind of put those processes in place, right? Say if they go, you know, if they go on a meal, they have to save their receipt and then write on it who went with them, like what client did they meet with. Number 6 sign of a good client that's going to know your value is they let you do your job. So this is like they're not micromanaging you. They're not checking in every 2 seconds about every transaction and needing to control everything, right? You can explain to them that this is actually in turn going to hinder your work and cause you to go slower. If they are emailing you regularly, texting you, calling you, and then it might be good to, you know, communicate some office hours. So I am available for a phone call on this day a week, and I will answer, you know, emails within 24 hours on business days. I honestly think it's kind of rare to have a client like this. Usually they just end up not caring after a while about their bookkeeping. But I think it's always good to put clear policies in place, maybe like a weekly check-in, and they can come to you with like a list of questions, something so that they feel heard, but they're not constantly like pestering you. Number 7 sign of a great client, this is rare, is they are proactive. So first of all, there's no like rush jobs like, hurry, I need this like overnight, or I need my books cleaned up in like 3 days because then I'm, you know, gonna file my taxes or whatever. And I have had even like really proactive clients that I love that maybe they have an unexpected expense and they go out of their way to tell me like, oh, this expense is coming up. So I did a big business dinner with these 3 people at, you know, Top Golf. So you're gonna see that business expense come through. Or they give you a heads up when they're gonna like buy a bunch of new office furniture or a couple new computers, stuff like that, so that you are aware to look out for that expense and categorize it correctly. I love that when clients are proactive. Number 8 is it feels easy working with them. So of course, in contrast to this, some things with some clients, just everything feels hard. Maybe the initial phone call, like you have tech difficulties, or you can't even find a time to meet because, you know, they have all these activities that they're doing. They have to walk their dog and they're going on vacation and all this stuff. So that feels really hard. But in contrast, if it feels just really easy, really natural to work with a client, if you have like the same vibe, that is really great. And that's not gonna happen with every single client. There are gonna be a few like hurdles, I think, but overall, it shouldn't feel terribly hard to be working with this client. And again, I totally know and I understand when you're first starting, you just want to take on any client that will possibly hire you. And that's fine. I mean, that's what I did. And I think some of it's like a learning experience. You kind of have to learn from your own mistakes sometimes. But if you want to learn from my mistakes, then just be kind of picky with your clients. You can do like a slow grow. Maybe like over 2 years, you get like 7 clients or something. And depending on your financial situation and your goals for your bookkeeping business, that might be perfect for you. Number 9 sign of a good client is that they respect your fees. This one is so frustrating when a client is like grumbling about like every dollar they have to spend, or again, they kind of don't respect like the scope of the work that you're supposed to be doing as a bookkeeper. If in an initial meeting, they're saying things like, oh, my last bookkeeper charged so much, like my business is really simple, I don't know why they were charging so much, like that could be a sign that this client isn't going to be a good one. Late payments can also be an issue. So if you're continually having someone pay you late, you know, maybe there's something written in your contract that, you know, there's a consequence for that. Or after like the 3rd time, that is a breach of contract. And a way to combat this is if you just do like a bank transfer at the beginning of each month, get paid before you actually do the work, that is, you know, kind of eliminates some of this issue because then they're paying every month automatically. And that can actually help some of the other issues, like the person who doesn't communicate with you and who you're delayed. They're like, oh, dang it, I'm paying for that bookkeeping. I need to actually get back to my bookkeeper. So that as a payment strategy is really helpful, as well as if you have a client you don't like and you're kind of on the fence about them, raise your rates and see if they stick around, because maybe it'll be more enjoyable for you to work for them if you're getting paid more and then it's worth your while. But if not, it's possibly just time to say goodbye to that client. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Subscribe if you want another bookkeeper video next week, and check out my website, FinePoints.biz. There's lots of good stuff for bookkeepers over there. All right, thanks, and I'll talk to you next week.